Hello there. Welcome back to Thriving Generation with Dr. G. It's another exciting day and a good day to thrive. Today I'm recording on Africa Day, so happy Africa Day to you all around the world. I'm trying my best to look very African today. I hope I pass the test, but I'm so excited to have you here today, and we are going to have a wonderful conversation with a thriving sister. She is thriving academically, and I really want her to share her experiences with all of us. If you are desiring to travel abroad to study, or you are currently doing so, this may be beneficial. So stay with us to the very end, and we'll learn a lot from our guest. Please, let's not drag this any longer. If you like what we do, like the video, share with others, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. But let's go ahead and meet our guest for today. Dr. AJ, we have given you the title already. You are a doctor. Dr. AJ, welcome to Thriving Generation.
Thank you, Dr. G. It's really great to be here.
Doc, please introduce yourself to the Thriving Generation. We would love to know who you are, where the AJ is from, and then a little bit more. We'll get into that. But kindly introduce yourself to the Thriving Generation.
All right, I can do that. So let's start with AJ. So I used to be a behavior therapist in Ghana, and I used to work with kids who sometimes were nonverbal and were now learning how to speak. And so AJY was kind of a mouthful. So then it was easier to say AJ, and then that just got stuck when I came here and I met adults who also found AJY to be a mouthful.
It's easy now.
Right.
But what's the full name?
So my full name is Ikea AJY Asomani-Adem. As my grandmother used to say, Anuma Korea and all the other things.
Everything is A. Did your mom intentionally do that?
Yes, actually. I think I and one of my sisters are all A than the other ones. And so I'm from Ghana. I moved here almost 5 years ago now to do my PhD. And I am now in a PhD program in school psychology at Indiana University with 1 year to go to be done with all of this.
Wow. You see why I've given you the title already? You're already my doctor, Dr. AJ. So AJ, tell us a little bit about your educational background. You did say that you were a psychologist back in Ghana, school psychologist. Is that what it is?
A behavior therapist. So I did my undergrad in Legon, University of Ghana. And then I did behavior therapy after that for 2 years. So there's a center, I think it's still at Airport Residential. It's called TheraKids. So I worked there for a couple of years. I was one of the first therapists that they trained. They brought people in from South Africa to train us on how to do this therapy called ABA, which is kind of controversial now. But we did that training, and then after a while, after the 2 years, my mom was like, you need a master's. And I was like, yeah, I need a master's, and also see what's out there. Because when I started ABA, I was like, I love this. I want to do this the rest of my life. I don't need anything else. But then along the way, I was like, oh, maybe I want to know why certain kids get diagnosed with certain things and how to do the diagnosis. So that then I applied for a master's in the UK. And I went to do that for 1 year in clinical psychological research, and then went home, did reading clubs, some writing camps with kids, and now here I am at IU. So it's just been kid-related psychology type stuff.
That is wonderful. Dr. AJ, you've been thriving. You've been thriving all around you, especially in your academics. I'm so proud of you. Guess what? Very soon the doctor is happening. But I want you to help us, okay? How did you decide that you want to study abroad? How did you get to the UK and then later decided to come to the US, in case somebody is also considering opportunities to do that?
I'd be happy to talk about that. So I was very fortunate to come from a family that's really big on education. And I think that started with my parents both are kind of first generation, but then my dad was lucky to get to go to a master's in Australia. And so that culture was kind of set already in my family. So for my mom, it was a big deal for her to expose us to other opportunities because she went with him. And I think she saw what it was like to be a student abroad and the kinds of experiences that you get to have. So she was very encouraging. I remember when I was in undergrad, my final year, I was going to not do a research project, but she was like, no, you should do a research project because then you can get into grad school. You should do it. And I was like, no, I don't think I can do it. And she said, no, you can do it. And she's always been that person. She graduated maybe a couple months ago with her own PhD. So,
oh wow,
that my kind of experience. So she was very encouraging. She saw the possibilities where I couldn't, and she was like, apply. I will say I applied to a bunch of schools in the US when I was applying to the UK. And so maybe that would be my first piece of advice, because just looking at their websites, I thought I had everything. I graduated from Legon with the first class. I had done a research project. So my things said BSc honors. I had good scores in the GRE. So I was like, well, everything on their website shows that I should get in. But then I just kept getting rejected by these schools in the US. And so now, having been here for a few years, I realized that in Legon, we didn't really have as much opportunity to do research as undergrads here get to do. And so that didn't make me as competitive. So even though on the surface I met all the requirements, I didn't have the research component that could give me a competitive edge over my counterparts that were applying. And so that might be something to keep an eye out for. Like, yes, on the surface, you're meeting the requirements, but it might be a good idea to talk to someone in the program and say, hey, this is my background. What kinds of things make someone a strong applicant for your program?
Yeah.
Because you never know who's in the pool. And just having that conversation with someone also puts a face to the name. So when they're reviewing your application, they have some idea of who you are and what your background is.
Yeah, I think that sounds really good, and it's a good advice. Since you're already talking about these things, how about you share with us some of the mistakes you made along the way so that we can avoid them? We are learning from you. We don't want to make them.
I don't want you to make them either. So for the UK, I was really fortunate because I went to one of those fairs that they usually hold in Ghana where they say, like study abroad fair. And funny thing, a friend of mine left her passport. One of the organizations found it and said, come pick it up. So it wasn't going to pick up. We talked to them and it turned out they do free applications for you. You just have to decide what schools you want to go to. And so I wish I had known about that when I first started, because when you hear about all these study abroad organizations, and some of them have fees that can be really prohibitive. But that organization was called UCAS, and literally, like, you send them your personal statement, they'll use to apply to band free. So within a week, I had heard back from schools, whereas I had been applying to US schools and getting rejected.
Your own, yeah.
Yeah.
What is the name of the organization again?
It's called UCAS. It's Nusu. UKEAS, yeah.
Okay.
So I think the reason I mentioned them is because if you compare, I got into a master's in clinical psychological research program. And so that was really helpful in helping to bridge the gap. You know, when I mentioned I didn't have research experience from my undergrad. So the master's was really helpful to give me that research experience that then made me a strong candidate to apply to the PhD. So the rejection is not the end. Like, you might get rejected from some programs, and it's really disheartening. Like, I remember crying on the couch at home and be like, maybe I'm a failure and I'm not smart enough. And my mom, like, she was trying not to laugh, but she was like, just keep trying, you know? And so the rejection is not the end. I say, if you get rejected, maybe find out why. Like, if they're willing to give you feedback, ask, and then use that feedback to kind of make your application stronger.
Okay.
So yeah, that's one of the mistakes that I'll say.
Okay. Did you know anybody in UK ahead of time? So how did you gather that courage that you are carrying your bags from home? You're going to the UK. You don't have anybody there.
Well, I will say my mom's older sister lives in London, but I didn't know anyone in the area where I was going to go to school. Okay. They didn't even know I was like coming. It was just like okay, these people said they can apply to schools for free for me. Okay, I've heard back. Okay, the funding is working out. Let's do it. So I think what gave me the courage is, like I said, I have to be honest, I think it's privilege in some way. Like, I had the privilege of having like a family that were really supportive of studying abroad. And even though we didn't necessarily have like a ton of money to make it work, my mom, she's always a believer in like giving it a try. And so she said, you go, like, I'll try to support you in any way that I can. So a large part of my courage came from my family. I'll say that, yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. So now let's jump to you are abroad, right?
Yeah.
UK, then later US.
Yeah.
What would you say is the main difference between being in the UK and in the US? I mean, they were both grad schools, so maybe we could compare in a certain way.
Yeah, they were both grad. So I think with the UK, the idea is like, even if you got a job on campus as an international student, you're also allowed to work outside campus. But they make it plain to you that there's no job you're going to get as an international student that's going to support you. Okay. So you go in knowing that, and so you have to have a plan for when you go. Mm-hmm. But I think here, the custom is you could get an assistantship, and that assistantship is what will fund your education. Mm. So I think with the UK, because you know that upfront, you're not going in, you are going in looking for a job, but the job is more, so I can get groceries, or I can, pay for my job. And I mean, there's some funded UK programs as well. Like there's some programs that could be funding. But here, like you could get into a program without funding, and they'll be like, oh, it's okay, because when you get to campus, you can find a job. Now, that's where I say, please be really careful, because there's lots of terms and conditions that are not mentioned when they say, oh, when you come to campus, you can find a job. I would really recommend talking to other graduate students in the program without faculty present and asking them for the lowdown. Like, for example, when you get there, how long does it take people to find a job? It took me, let's say 6 months to get like a job that offered an assistantship. And that was because I just overcame my, shyness and whatever, and approached a faculty member and said, hey, if you don't help me find a job, I'm going home. And not everyone can do that. So you might want to ask, how long does it take to find a job? So if they told me that it took someone 2 years to find a job. So in those 2 years, what's your plan? Like, how are you paying tuition? Because those bills don't stop coming. Yeah. You'll get a new BRESA bill notification every month, and it can be really stressful. So terms and conditions, how long does it take to find a job? Secondly, even if you had the job, like my job only covers 95% of my tuition. As an international student, tuition is like in the tens of thousands. So that means that 5% of the tens of thousands and the mandatory fees every semester are on me. And they have to come from the same stipend from which my cost of living comes from. So again, how much is the job covering, and how many people get a job with an assistantship and health insurance? So I'll say those are some questions that you should be sure to ask. With the UK, it's not, you pay your tuition, it's just really upfront. You know what you're getting into. This might be a thing of the school that I ended up at. It could be that your experience might be very different if you went to another school.
Okay, let's go quite, practical and personal. Can you share with the public what actually happened? And I mean, you will not be the first person going through that. I have a similar experience, but mine was my own mistake. I didn't read the contract. The contract stated that the funding was for 1 year. So I thought it was renewable after the 1 year. So I came, I'm excited. And then after the 1 year, like, okay, it's time to pay off. I'm like, won't you renew my contract? Like, the assistantship was for a year. And there I was. I mean, it's really, really true what you are saying. Know what you are getting into. And the truth is that if I had known ahead of time, I wouldn't have even gotten into the program in the first place. So maybe it was good and bad at the same time. But what was your experience?
Before I talk about it, I just want to say that's another piece of advice that I might have, because the thing is, don't be afraid to say no to a program, right? Like, even if you have to defer it so that you can figure out funding, defer it. Because the stress of being in it without the funding, Doc, I'm sure you can attest to that stress. Like, they should want you as much as you want to be there, because that also shows the level of support that you're going to have while you're there.
Yes.
So I'll say, don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to defer, and make it really clear. If you don't give me funding, I cannot do this. So that they can, because lots of people say that and then they're able to negotiate. So there's people, like, you can tell from certain programs, like different levels of funding that people have. Like, some people come in the same program and they have like a a whole ton of funding. And then some people will also come, it's because like what you're negotiating. It's like when you're going in for a job, right? If they say, what's your salary expectation? And you're like, oh, whatever you give me. Then you find out later that
you could have had more. Yeah.
So definitely be sure to make it clear like what you need before you go into the program. But just in terms of my own experience, I'll say I was really naive when I was, again, because on the website it said, oh, like people who are accepted get offered funding. So I was like, okay, so once I'm accepted, I'm going to get funding. And then the funding amount was like a slap in the face. But I was like, okay, they said if I get on campus, I'll find a job. So sold stuff that I had to sell and everything, and then got here and it was like, oops, I'm applying, but there's really not that many jobs because everyone on campus is kind of competing for the same jobs, right? And so then like it was like that, what have I done? Maybe if I had, because everyone was really enthusiastic, like, yeah, you should come, it was going to be really great. But they are well-meaning. They're not saying this maliciously. It's just, they don't realize what the realities are for graduate students if they come,
especially international graduates.
Yeah, international graduate students if you don't have funding. And for you health insurance costs, because if you don't have a job, you have to fund your own health insurance. Health insurance is expensive. So yeah, I'll say that was my experience. It was a very tough first couple of years. I'm not gonna lie. And part of it was I was really fortunate to have a good support system. The Ghanaians in Bloomington, hats off to you guys. But so I was really fortunate to have you guys. I was fortunate to have my family, but it still was really tough navigating. And it was mostly because I had assured people back home, like, yeah, I know if I need support, somehow magically we're going to make it happen. But they're saying in this school that I'm not going to need it because I'll find a job, And so it was hard to go back and say, well, actually,
help me. Send me cities, turn it into dollars and bring it here.
Right. And think about the conversion rate even. So I felt really awful eventually I had to, but the thing is knowing what you're getting into so you're not having to do these sorts of things.
Yeah. Putting stress on yourself, your family, and not many people can actually get people to send them money in Ghana in the first place.
Exactly.
You'll be stranded. I think the same program I was in, there was a Nigerian who had to leave because there was no funding. So it's real. It's not magic. You have to know what you are getting into. The stress is very real. And the restrictions for international students, sometimes they are well-meaning, but they actually don't know that as internationals, we have limited amount of, what do they call it? The hours you work.
Hours that you can work,
Yeah. Where you can work.
Yes, where. And because I think also find out because, for example, our university is like, okay, in the summer, you're allowed to work as many hours as you want, but the university has a cap on how many hours graduate students can work. So even if you're like, oh, in the summer, I'm going to work 40 hours to make money, the university has a cap. So that's an important question to ask. Because if I was like, oh, in the summer, I'm going to work 60 hours a week to make some money, and then my university is like, nope, we only pay for 29 hours, and I'm only allowed to work in the university. That means I've done myself a great disservice by not finding out ahead of time.
Yeah. So, Doc, let's not make people sad. Okay. So how did you finally find a job?
I was really fortunate because there was a professor, my program's favorite professor, one of my favorite professors ever. His name is Professor Smith. I went to him and I said, listen, I'm going to need a job. And so he put some feelers out and asked people. And then Dr. D'Amico, who is of Literacy, Culture, and Language Education, he offered me an hourly job. And so that hourly job was then kind of, they offered me an assistant once I'd worked there for a while. And then once the funding for that ran out, I applied to the place where I work now. And I've worked there now for over 3 years, I want to say, since 2018, about 4 years. So that first job is kind of like once you're in the system, then it's easy to apply to other ones and be like, oh, I've done this now, So I think the biggest thing for me is don't be afraid also to admit when you need help, because we can think that there's going to be these consequences. Like maybe if I say that I need a job, they're going to make me go back, right? But if you don't tell anybody what you're going through, there's no way that people are going to be able to help you. So
yeah. And I'm smiling because you helped me a lot with my applications. So, hey, your job was great.
And I love that job. I mean, I'm gonna be off campus doing an internship for the next year. So unfortunately, I have to give it up. But like that's one of the sad things for me. Like, oh, I'm gonna give up working with students and telling them these things that I'm saying here now, one-on-one, and being like, please talk to your.
Are you comfortable sharing the job you had?
Yeah. So I work for the University Grant Center. So it's a center that's like dedicated to helping graduate students with finding funding. I feel like I had lived experience that helped me when I was applying to be like, I want to make sure other students don't have to go through that. It's not always possible, but
That's amazing. That's amazing. Look at you, somebody who didn't have funding now helping people get funded. And I was applying for I don't remember exactly what it was called, but one of the prestigious awards.
John Edwards.
Hey, see you.
I'm always telling people about it. I'm like, please apply.
AJ was wonderful. She reviewed all my applications and I got it $20,000. So, Doc, yeah.
It just shows you had a strong application, doctor. Like, we can only do so much. I will say I work with some really fantastic people, and they also like looked at the stuff, and I mean, usually we can tell if someone has a strong application. I'm not supposed to say that, but yeah.
And also means that you are smart. You are doing great things wherever you are. So let's just come to the conclusion, right?
Yeah.
We've encouraged people. We've talked about the process. If you were to do this all over again, what are the key things you would do so that the thriving generation would take it as a final advice from you?
Yes, I think I would speak to faculty more directly, and I would be more upfront with because when they said you can find a job on campus, I wouldn't have taken it at face value. I would have asked more specific questions. It just can be hard not knowing what questions to ask, but that's why we're doing this, right? So you know what you can ask. And then also I think I wouldn't have been afraid to safety fair for a year if I wanted to put them together. I think back then I was like, oh, I really want to do a PhD. And so it was kind of hard to just turn someone down when I had like that acceptance that I was looking for. So there's that. And then also when you're on campus, I say network, because you can look on these websites for jobs, but sometimes someone in your own program might have like a position available that they haven't yet advertised. And so by speaking to people and letting them know your situation, you're likely to be top of mind. And so if someone comes up, they can email you and ask you about it. That's how I ended up working at the library for a while as a side job. So
that's great, Doc. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you. We love what you do, and we are cheering you on. Keep shining, Dr. AJ, all the way. We'll hear your name and we'll be proud. Me, you are my friend. You can't go anywhere.
I'm not going anywhere.
I want to be associated with you, okay?
We're doing things. We're doing King Khan books. And
I know, right? We are doing great things. We are thriving together. Okay, thriving generation. You just heard from Dr. AJ. We are calling her doctor ahead of time. Please, do you have questions? Put that in the comments below. Do you want to learn anything else when it comes to studying abroad in the UK, in the US? Put your comments below. We'll be back to check them out. Have you had any experiences that could be, beneficial to all of us? Share. You never know who will benefit from that. So please put that there as well. We'll be back to check that out. If you enjoyed this video, kindly like the video, share with your network. And if you haven't subscribed by now, please do so. It will help us a lot. We will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for your support. Bye.